Hello, and welcome to As Built, the podcast about architecture firms and buildings and how both get built. I am your co-host, Patience Jones, and with me, as ever, is
Brian Jones.
your other co-host. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are talking about the balanced practice. What is that, you may be asking? I will tell you from the get-go that it is different than what we hear a lot, which is like work-life balance, work-life balance. This is not about that. This is a completely different concept that originated with Brian Jones, who came up with this way of thinking about firms. So, Brian, explain the balanced practice.
Well, to kind of backtrack a little bit, this came about after thinking about the common thing that happens in firms, which is that it has upswings and it has downswings. And that might be work related or it might be due to turnover. And so thinking about how to develop something that would be helpful to make it so that firms had a more even balanced feel to them. And so the balance practice is sort of a three-part piece, which is your firm culture is one piece of the puzzle, your marketing and business development is the other piece, and then finally the work is the final piece. So the idea behind the balance practice is that if you are too focused on any one of these, the rest of your practice is suffering in some way. So if you're solely focused on the work, for instance, which often happens in a firm, you may find at the end of a project that you have no more new work to do.
Yeah.
And your employees may also be very upset with the workplace that they find themselves at. So it's an example of like, by trying to create a equilibrium between these three parts, you have a better, more sustainable practice.
I like that. And I'm thinking about too, because we've worked with clients who it sounds bizarre, but they were sort of over focused on marketing and business development to the exclusion of how they were going to deliver the work and whether it was getting delivered.
Bigger point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so no matter which of these that you are maybe either under or over focused on in the course of your practice, and firm culture is equally as dubious. If you are under focused on firm culture and what it's like to live and work in your firm, then chances are people may not be having a great experience and you may experience greater turnover of the people that want to stick around. If you are over focused on it, again, you maybe aren't as focused on other areas of the practice and people may have a nice experience up until the point that they're having a lousy experience during the course of doing the work, or there's not enough new work coming in. So
That's the thing. That's the thing about firm culture is like it only works if you have a firm. And so, one of the ways that you see the signs of the firm culture quadrant is not doing so well is people aren't happy. But the other unfortunate consequence of not tending to the other quadrants well is that you may end up having to reduce your workforce, which is bad. And then also for the people that are left, they don't feel so great.
I mean, one of the common things that we hear from firms and working with them is the feast or famine of practice, that they're too busy or they're not busy enough. And there are definitely moments where your firm might have had projects booked and those projects suddenly evaporate. This is not talking about those kinds of conditions. This is talking about the work that you need to do as a firm principal to make sure that all the cylinders are working in conjunction with one another.
I like that. So how do you know if your firm is in balance? And I keep saying quadrant because I can't for the life of me remember the word that refers to 3 sections. But for everyone else out there, I know it's wrong. I know it's not a quadrant. It's 3.
It's three pieces.
It's 3 pieces. I know that.
Triad.
Triad. Oh, that sounds bad. Okay, let's not call it a triad. Okay. So what how do you know how do you know if you have a triad? No. Um How do you know if your firm is in balance? Because this is not a way that firms traditionally have thought about their existence and their operations.
Well, I like to think of them as symptoms. And so, just as when you catch a cold or something else, you have symptoms. And so, the firm culture one, either you have a lot of turnover, that's definitely a symptom. You have people that are stagnating in their jobs. So maybe you have really talented individuals that you've cherry picked over the course of your firm's life, but suddenly they are no longer performing at capacity. So that means that something about their experience in the firm is not great. So that would be one way that you might diagnose or start to see some symptoms of firm culture issue. Marketing and business development, that one's pretty clear. A lot of times
Is it?
I mean, one symptom is definitely like your work flow is down in terms of the number of projects that you're acquiring is down. And this is just one of the symptoms, though. Another one might be that projects that you were historically strong at getting, you are no longer the front contender for those types of projects. So let's say your firm is an educationally focused practice, and this is more towards the marketing end of the spectrum than maybe it is the business development side of things. Maybe it's that what your firm has subsequently been known for is no longer being an educational practice. So it might be that the ways in which you are communicating externally are no longer effective. So that might be another thing that you start to notice. Another is that the types and scale of projects are no longer what you were previously having happen. So, like, you had large projects that were inbound into the firm, and now projects have scaled back in scope and size. And some of that can be economically driven for sure, but like it's definitely worth a look when you start to see these symptoms crop up in your firm.
Well, I can imagine someone saying like, "Well, we're doing so much marketing. We're doing, we can't possibly have overcorrected. We should just be doing, lots and lots of marketing." And I think part of looking at the balance is exactly what you were talking about, which is what are the jobs that are coming in? What are the phone calls that are coming in? Who's taking our phone calls? Do we have lunches set up with people? Are we getting out there? But another way to think about it, and probably at the same time, is are we doing too much? Or are we doing too much of one thing when we should be spreading those efforts over a lot of different things? So if you have a marketing staff that's like running around all the time to get the print ads in the magazines on time, and you're doing like a new print ad with new creative for every magazine in town, and that's all of what they're doing, then I would say you might want to look at, is that in balance? And maybe they're pulling in staff, from other departments because they're trying to, we need this ad reworked and we need these photos done and we need these renderings done. That might be a sign that you're not in balance. You're doing it, congratulations, but it's not a balanced amount. It's actually too much.
Well, you're hitting on a key component of what, it's a natural segue into the next piece, which is that the part of the detecting the balance and where firms often struggle is that there's not a clear strategy for what they need to do. So, what is your firm culture strategy? What is your marketing strategy? What is your work strategy? And the reason why this is so essential is the quintessential thing that is often overlooked, which is that you have to know when you've done it and when
Yeah.
you've achieved the goal. Part of the real, especially with marketing, part of the nebulous place that you might find yourself is that if you're just aiming and spraying and praying, as they would say, then you don't know when you're done because you have no goals and you have no strategy. So you just keep doing stuff. And this is where part of it is not, I don't want to mislead people to think that we're asking them to split their attention. What we're asking people to do is basically focus their energy with strategic vision for the entirety of the firm. And that is the only way.
Ugh, that's such a big ask. Why? Why do I have to do this? Why does it always come down to strategy?
I
Because it
know
does.
it
Because it just does.
it does.
Yeah. You decided to run a firm, so this is the bed that you are laying in.
And by having the strategy, some of this will fall into place a little bit easier because you won't be wondering, like, have we done enough marketing? Have we done enough in the business development? Because you will know when you've achieved your goals.
Well, and the goals they can be set in any way that makes sense for your firm.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to start by saying, okay, we allocate, we assume that a work week represents X number of hours, and then we divide that by 3, and that's the amount of time across the firm that should be going into each one of these buckets. That's a really easy way to start. Then you can become more nuanced and look at, okay, the hours that we're spending in that bucket, in that triad, if you will, is that the right way to be spending those? Do we need to have different goals? You could take the goal of, okay, we want to have X number of new commissions, and we assign, a time value to that, or we assign a dollar value to that. And that's how this gets split up. Don't get too in the weeds about it, because the worst thing that could happen is you waste like 2 to 3 weeks trying to figure out exactly how you're going to figure out the measurement for whether you're doing something. Just do a quick calculation, a quick assessment, something, assign some markers to it, and then start so that you can measure it, you can revise, you can see what's working and what's not.
I think one of the ones that we haven't touched on is the work
Well, yeah, no one wants to talk about that.
because it's the single reason your firm is in business. I mean, first of all, is the work. And it seems like
Sometimes,
here you go.
sometimes it's because I want to see my name in lights,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Ideally,
yeah,
it's about the work. But and so it may feel a little bit at odds with that notion that it's part of a ecosystem, that,
yeah.
it but just like you have to have a goal and strategy for your firm culture and for the marketing and business development, you need a strategy for how work gets done in your office. And that might relate more to the process of how it gets done so that you don't have, you know, unnecessary conflict within the firm that results in lags in production, that is unclear communication,
Hmm.
because that frustration will also drag down any efforts that you're trying to achieve in your firm culture. And ultimately, it impacts your ability to have successful marketing and business development because if you can't deliver projects in a timely fashion or the work is not what it should be, it's going to hurt all those other efforts as well.
And oftentimes, issues with the work can be traced back to the client not understanding something. And that doesn't mean that it's your fault that the client doesn't understand. It could be for any number of reasons. But the more the client understands what is happening, what they're getting, what the possibilities are, who they're supposed to talk to if they have questions or if something goes wrong, and when they're supposed to bring those concerns up, which is, for example, like not after the foundation has been poured, do you
Yes.
tell me that you are considering a different site? They that will help the project stay on track more, because so much of the work can be eaten up. What falls under the work umbrella is conversations with angry clients, answering the same question over and over and over again, having to sort out internally in your firm because the client knows how to play people against each other. And when they don't get the answer they like, they call somebody else in the firm and they get a different answer. And now you've got to sort that out internally in your firm because the client has been promised something that you can't deliver. So, sort of setting up a process at the beginning for how all of this is going to be handled, and really, and I'm so averse to this concept, but I say this recognizing its value. Over communicate. Over communicate with the client. I guarantee you what seems obvious to you probably hasn't even occurred to the client.
And it's doing two things. It's both communicating the thing that you're wanting to talk about, but it's sending a subtext of the idea that things are under control and well in hand. And
Yeah.
that can never be in too much supply.
Yeah. You will save yourself and your staff so much time if the client understands that you've got this in control and that if there's a problem, you'll reach out to them. Otherwise, they're going to be contacting you every day, every hour sometimes, asking for updates, asking for changes. And that takes what might have been, 35% of your work week. Now it's 80% of your work week. And that time has to come from somewhere. And where it comes from is the firm culture and the marketing and business development. And it's okay if, 1 week, a couple of weeks, even a month, it's out of whack because of things that you don't have any control over, or because you knew that this was going to be a time that was super, super work heavy. But then there has to be a ship righting if you're not going to end up in debt to two of the other sectors.
You're only hurting yourself.
Yes. Which is not what you want to think about when you are on hour 19 of your day trying to get the work out the door.
And we've been this has all been premised around a single person being the decision maker that has control over these three segments of the firm. So the larger your firm, the more that communication has to be robust between all the different partners and principals within the firm in order to achieve a balanced practice. Because if you have a person that's solely focused on business development, then how you might wrongly assume that puts you in balance because you have an asset and resource devoted to that. Well, weren't that were true, but it's not.
You have to look at holistically the entire firm. What you're going for is an even third split across the firm. So it wouldn't make sense to say to, the BD person that you've hired, okay, well, 30% of your time should be spent on BD and then 30% should be spent on developing firm culture. Like, they would say that is not what I signed up for and that's not what my skills are. And they would be right. So it's across the board. How is the firm as an entity balanced?
It is a daily practice. This is not something that gets implemented overnight. It's something that you first start by, we've talked many times about this, about setting a strategic vision for the firm, of having strategy for how these things are going to be implemented, and then putting one foot in front of the other. It's literally that is the process, is doing that.
And daily practice doesn't mean that you, at the end of every day, you're saying, okay, where's my third? And in the morning when you get up, you're like, okay, this is my third. It means doing the process, knowing what you committed to. If this is the amount of time you should be spending on something, if these are the goals, and then measure it at some increment that makes sense for your firm, whether that's weekly or monthly.
And it's a goal that you're aiming towards.
Mm-hmm.
That's the larger important thing here, is that it would be amazing if you could come out of the gate and be in balance. I mean, that's just not...
Well, and maybe you are.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible that you are.
But if you aren't, it's okay. This is the process of helping to make a more sustainable practice.
Yeah.
So what are the big takeaways?
Figure out where you are in your balanced journey. And an interesting exercise would be to write down where you think your percentages are in each section. And then look at whatever measurement tools you have in place to see how closely that matches up with reality. Then trying to say, okay, if we're going to try to give everything its equal due, what's the mechanism for doing that makes the most sense for our firm? Is it based on time? Is it based on dollars? Is it based on certain achievements that we benchmark? And then just do it. Just try every day.
I think that says it pretty much all. It's it's a process, and the goal is to have a healthier and more sustainable firm.
Absolutely. So go be healthy, go be sustainable, go feel comfortable, and it will help you feel more comfortable if you know, okay, we didn't get everything accomplished that we wanted to get accomplished in that sector today, but we're making progress toward it. So thank you for making progress with us and listening to this episode, and we will see you next time.